Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another live. I am absolutely delighted this morning as we have Professor David Clutterbuck with us. Good morning, David. How are you?
Yeah, a very croaky David. Yeah,
A little croaky David. Yes, a little bit poorly. We're all feeling a bit worse for wear on a Wednesday morning. I'm absolutely honoured to talk to David. I've read some of his books, not all of them. He's got many to go for me, but he's just been an absolute inspiration for me as a coach, learning and developing myself over the years. But David is actually one of the early pioneers of developmental coaching and mentoring. He's the co-founder of European Mentoring and Coaching Council. He's the author of 75 books. He's got his 75th book's coming out soon. And that includes the first evidence-based titles on coaching, culture, and team coaching. And anyone who's out there who is a coach who's getting into the next level of coaching, team coaching, is something really seriously to think about. He's a visiting professor at 4 business schools and leads a global network of specialist mentoring and coaching training consultants at Coaching and Mentoring International. David, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in. So one of the things that we were looking at together before this live was, and the theme actually of April for me is around balance and well-being in the workplace. So from your point of view, what tips would you give leaders out there to really get focused in on balance and well-being?
well, we've just done a big study for the conference board, and one of the things about post-COVID leadership, and one of the things that comes out from that very clearly, is that leaders have got to take more responsibility for the well-being of the people in their teams.
Right.
And they were quite happy to do this during COVID, but now we're back to normal. We'd just be our uncaring so and so again, and that ain't going to wash anymore. So the big resign is one of the symptoms of leaders not adapting to this. So we do have to think about how do we not just the leader, but the whole team in the team coaching work that we do. When we look at the dynamics of highly effective teams, one of the things is that these teams, everybody takes collective responsibility for not only for their own well-being, learning and performance, but the well-being, learning and performance of everybody else.
Yes.
So that collective responsibility is really important. And that means as well that the leader can actually start to rely upon the team to support them. We're in the midst of an epidemic of imposter syndrome. Leaders who want to feel in control can't, because everything is going sideways. And so the more they try and control, the less effective they are. And being able to step back and be vulnerable, that's when you start to get psychological safety in the team. You get people stepping forward to help you as a leader. So it's actually in the leader's interest to behave in this way and to be more inclusive and be concerned about the well-being of others, because then they can be concerned about the well-being of the leader.
So that sounds like the leader actually needs to A, understand exactly what you've just explained, and B, be more conscious about the decisions they're making, because when you're up against the cost, you've got price rises happening, you've got recruitment challenges in organizations as well. We're going back to some sort of normality, that it's counterintuitive, surely, to think about being vulnerable and psychological safety of the team and so on.
Well, if you want productivity, there's a great swathe of research now that shows that that the productivity in a team is very closely related to the level of psychological safety in the team.
Right.
And so, how are you going to get? If we talk about 3 things, we talk about performance, which is how you do things now. Capability, which is how you set things up to perform in the future, and capacity, how you do more with less. And those three foci are critical to any team that's going to be around for the long term.
Right. So again, it's about the leader being absolutely conscious, sitting down and go, well, where are we as a team with those things, and how do we keep improving? How do we keep pushing up for that? So there's What's the coach's role? So any manager, leader that out there that's being coached, what's the role of the coach to ensure that that happens?
Well, all coaching and all mentoring too, it really is about helping people gain clarity.
Yeah.
To think things through. And there's two focuses of that. There's the clarity about who you are, your values, what's going on inside you, and the clarity about what's happening out what's happening out there.
Yeah.
And link those two sets of clarities into making better decisions. That's all coaching does, basically, at its very root.
Right.
And so if we can help people to get that clarity, then that's the core of the coach's role. But that involves challenging them. It involves supporting them when they don't want to acknowledge stuff.
Yeah.
It helps them to develop a whole bunch of skills. And the key for a team coach, as opposed to, say, a facilitator comes in and sorts out a particular issue that you've got. And it could be a strategy, it could be work processes, it could be anything, but it's a particular issue. And they hold you while you go through that process. A team coach helps you to actually develop the behaviors to coach yourselves as a team. I think that's such a big difference. So there's a big gap here. And if you think about it, you're helping an individual client, a leader or a manager in an organization, and you're helping them to become more effective in their role. And maybe help them to understand how they develop themselves, a particular skill in themselves. So if that's impact level X, if we can help that team leader think about how they create a coaching culture in their team, and actually leverage all the goodwill and the potential of the collective intelligence in the team, that's probably X times 5.
Yeah.
In fact, you use X times however many people there are in the team.
Right. Okay.
Yep. And then if you come in and you coach the whole team together, you're now into a different. You're probably X times 10.
Yeah.
These are we don't know what the exact figures are, and we'll change from organization to organization.
You're getting a synergy within that group. You're getting a higher level of return.
Yeah, and then you go to coaching teams of teams.
Yeah,
and organizational coaching. So you've got multiple layers where the impact that you have is greater each time. And that for coaches is a very good positive thing, because we like to be useful. We like to feel that we've done something worthwhile. But at the same time, it's a more valuable product. I often let you say, if we've just helped one more narcissistic middle manager climb another rung in the corporate hierarchy, is that really what coaching's all about? If as a coach you're just thinking about how do I make how do I make money out of this, if this is my living, well, maybe that's it. But if we go further than that, if we say, okay, well, no, actually, we want to make a big difference, then how we leverage our skills as a coach, we can now question what skills do we need to be able to influence them at a much wider level.
And that's where the team coaching will really leverage our ability of coaches to support more people.
Absolutely.
Take them up to that next level.
Yeah.
And no, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, but one of the big things is I've done it. We've all, team coaching, as distinguished from team facilitation, has really only been around 25 years. And we, apart from in sport, and we've all done it. We think, oh yes, well, I'm a good, I think I'm a reasonably competent one-to-one coach. I'll just take on the team. And then you find yourself out in front in this environment where you are exposed, or you're a rabbit in the headlights, because it's more complicated, it's messier. You've got to be comfortable with the messiness. I like the example. You're working with a team which is disunited.
Yes.
They can't agree on anything.
Yes.
And then suddenly they all come together, and they all come together to blame you. And you've got to be able to cope with that.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to turn that round and say things like, okay, so do you always shoot the messenger?
Yeah.
And it's that confidence and the bigger skill set that's so important.
And just getting so hearing the benefit of a coach supporting the organization through team coaching. How do you influence a manager, CEO, let's say, to invest in coaching and drive high performance in the organization, especially if that leader is more command and control?
Yeah. There's no simple answer to that one, obviously.
Right.
When we're talking about teams, I often ask you, which teams in this organization can you not afford to fail? And what are you prepared to invest to make sure that they don't?
Yeah.
And that's easy. But when we're down to individuals, it's more difficult. It really comes down to the willingness of that manager to engage with the coaching process. And if it's imposed upon them, that willingness is likely to be lower.
Yes.
So the question is not who needs coaching, it's who understands the need that they need coaching.
Yeah. And it is the answer. Part of the answer anyway is actually you can discuss and talk about the benefits of coaching, the case studies that fit around it, but ultimately it's like leading a horse to water. You can't make it drink. It has to be an individual decision. If it's the leader saying, I don't believe that that's going to be right for my organization, then it's never going to work ultimately.
Yeah, increasingly what we're learning is that the way to unfreeze people is to get them to agree to experiment, to put themselves in a slightly uncomfortable position so that they can actually get more used to that, and then they can go into more uncomfortable positions.
Yeah.
And again, one of my favorite examples is the guy that didn't believe he was a bully. He said, no, I'm just driven and passionate. And so we said, okay, so how about you agree with your team that at the next team meeting, you're going to spend 10 minutes showing them the difference between being passionate and driven and being a bully. So you're going to warn them so they don't know what's happening. And then you're going to launch into this bullying tirade and see what happens. Yeah. And it's a game, it's an experiment, see what happens.
Yeah.
So he told me afterwards, well, he said, I got about 5 minutes into it. And then I realized there wasn't any difference. I had to apologize to them all.
And what did that do to his future leadership style and approach?
Well, I think it was such a cathartic moment.
You held a mirror to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you can't take the horse to water. You can't make somebody look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And indeed, what they see in the mirror may not be what you see in the mirror, because people tend to distort.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I've done in the past as a coach, when sort of, well, I'm not fully convinced of the power of coaching, is that I'll offer that to them. So, well, give coaching a go. I'll give you a few sessions and see how it works for you. And I would say over 90% of those people then say, well, blimey, do you know what? I didn't realize how powerful it was. There's the mirror. And then they move forward with a coaching relationship.
Yeah. And one of the things we've learned as well is that if you want to get line managers to pick up on being coaches, and to have a more coaching style, one of the best ways of doing that is to get them to be a mentor first.
So impart their knowledge before becoming a coach.
To use their knowledge. You don't necessarily have to dump it on people. I mean, the big difference here is that a mentor is a coach plus.
Yeah.
Because the plus is having this knowledge and expertise, but using it to craft better questions, and occasionally to give somebody context. And there's this big difference between giving somebody advice, which doesn't belong to either coaching or mentoring, and giving somebody context, which does.
Yeah.
And because as the mentor you have more context, then you're able to be able to give more context.
Yeah.
When I was a young journalist, my mentor at the time told me, he said, well, David, you clearly are, it's one thing to say that you'd like to get into a management role. He said, but I'd like you to just go around the organization and observe all the managers and just come back and tell me, what do you see? And so I came back and said, I think I get the message. I said, there aren't any managers with hair down to their shoulders. He said, yeah, well, and what conclusions you? So conclusions you draw. So I said, okay, so if you want to be a manager or become a manager, you've got to look like a manager. He said, okay, so what do you want to do with that piece of information? He said, I'll go away and think about it. And so no advice there, but leading me, using his wisdom to help me become a little bit wiser instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're getting into a position of thinking for yourself to impart and take your own journey rather than being imparted a journey. Yeah, I love it. We've got a couple of people on the call this morning. David, so I'm just going to introduce a guy called Chris Gunn, and he's asked this question: what's your favourite story of an individual team that was against having coaching that was turned around into a positive outcome? What a great question. Love that.
Yeah. Well, there are, of course, lots and lots, and very often the most interesting ones, the ones that come in supervision rather than the ones you do yourself. It's a great privilege of being a supervisor. Is people bring you all the most difficult issues to deal with. But we had a head of a charity, and she basically wanted to protect her top team. Therefore, she didn't share all the worries with them and so forth. And team coaching would have just brought all those worries out, and she was all against doing that. So she didn't want to put any more burdens on them. They're all overworked as it was. And the question that really made the difference was, do you have the courage to be more vulnerable to your team? And then from that, she said, okay, well, I'll experiment. And we got the team to get involved with that. And once, of course, she started sharing these things, there were all sorts of things they could do to help relieve the pressure on her. And the team coaching then was able to deal with all sorts of other things.
Wow. That's so good. I mean, what a powerful example as well. And actually the amount of time it must have given that leader back to then think differently, think more strategically, think more supportively of the team, all sorts of different things that they can do with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lovely question to a leader. How much of your time is spent doing things that other people should be doing?
Yes. It's a strong one as well. As a business owner, we'll do things. With business owners when I'm coaching, sometimes we'll do like skill fund matrix, for example. Like what do you enjoy and what's high and low skill, or we'll create a not to do list for that particular manager, which just gets them to start to delegate and train some people some of that stuff away. Steph's on the call as well. Stephanie Ricks. Good morning, Steph. And she says she really likes the distinction of mentoring being given and the context versus giving advice. It was absolutely very subtle as well, because a lot of people think it differently. So that was really good to hear from you there, David. Thank you. What are the other questions that's probably leading on to this? So if you're thinking about the benefits of coaching, the benefits of team coaching, multiple team coaching within the organization, having that positive impact, maybe influencing leaders to then take on coaching, a great story that you just shared with us there. How do you see the coach's role in calling out the lack of diversity in leadership that we see in organizations right now?
Well, we've got a number of programs at the moment, which I find fascinating. They're mentoring programs rather than coaching programs. And we've taken reverse mentoring. So where you get you get a junior person from a black and minority ethnic background, for example, working with educating, if you like, somebody from a senior level. But there's a level of reciprocality there. Yeah. But now we're saying, look, the two of you come together and you form a unit that actually with the objective of changing the system. Wow. And so you add to the whole process, changing the system. And I think this same principle applies increasingly. We are so used to coaching being focused on the individual. We've got into coaching for the team, but actually coaching works most effectively when it takes into account and addresses the system. And one of the things that we use a lot is the issue of pain in the system.
Yeah.
Where is the pain in the system? So, in the heart, who in this larger system is feeling unloved?
Yeah.
In the legs, what are we running away from? And so forth. So the metaphor of each of the bodily parts being a place of pain. And we all know, if you go to a chiropractor, they say, oh yes, you've got a pain in your leg, but actually it's a pain in your back or wherever. Where we feel the pain is not necessarily the place where the pain originates.
So getting to the root cause of the problem, the core of the problem.
Yeah.
And so how would because that's very dynamic thinking, isn't it? That's very you have to be incredibly open to, say, do reverse mentoring, for example. So how would you encourage, an SME, a small organization, to be focused on the things that we're talking about? Maybe they've only got 5 or 6 people in their organization.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of little tools that we have, like you can do a belonging matrix. So how do you feel that you belong in this environment, and compared to other people? Or a power matrix. Who do you think has more power and influence in this team than you, and less than you? So where do you put yourself in the ranking around this? And then you share it. And people, of course, have very different perceptions around this. And all of that, these are just ways of getting behind it. So that how are people feeling in the workplace? What's the level of psychological safety? It's so common for the leader of the team and maybe 1 or 2 of his or her best mates to feel really psychologically safe. But it doesn't occur to them that other people don't.
Right. Yes, it's the impact that they're having on them by having their own safety.
Yeah. Wow. We've got a project at the moment, which I hope is going to come to fruition. We've been looking at neurodiversity and coaching. And it started off, the idea as a book to help coaches work with clients who are neurodiverse. So this is Asperger's, on the autistic spectrum, ADHD, dyslexia, highly sensitive persons, all of these different neurodiverse states. But now it's morphed into a book which is going to be bringing these coaches who are from these different backgrounds, who have this diversity, getting them to talk about their work and how they bring it in, and how they're actually able to bring something different and valuable.
Wow, that's incredible. That'll be so powerful and empowering for that group as well, and for the leaders alike, who people who are not in that space may feel uncertain, threatened, or not sure what to do to support those people as well. That's fantastic. There's a comment here as well from Steph. She said, "Thank you, David, for being such a key part in my team coaching learning as well with Peter Hawkins."
Thank you, Steph. It's good. The GTCI has been an interesting journey, a fascinating journey for us all.
I can imagine. So one of the things that you mentioned to me before when we spoke was that you set up, or you're setting up a new website where you've got a lot of resources and articles to be able to support people, coaches and leaders alike, to learn from. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is something that we started creating about 15 years ago, and it's sort of grown and grown. So it's called Coaching and Mentoring Resources. It's got hundreds of short pieces. So what do I do with somebody who keeps procrastinating? To which the answer is ask them when would be the best time to procrastinate. And you've got things like, what do I do if somebody keeps crying? And so, or how do I help somebody with imposter syndrome, and so forth. So they are deliberately short bites that enable the coach to get, right, I've got a way forward here. And so under our new website, it'll be much easier to access that. If anybody wants a 3-month free access to it, just connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know. And
Amazing. There you go. So everybody who's listening, connect with David on LinkedIn. and you'll get three months free access to those resources once they're launched. Amazing. And would you say is it aimed at both leaders and coaches, or is it one particular?
It's primarily aimed at coaches and mentors. Yeah.
The coaches and mentors, right? Yeah. Fantastic.
But the leader as coach, of course, can use it as well.
Yes. Yeah. If the leaders are coaching. Yeah. Which company have you worked with that you've said fits that definition of a coaching culture the sort of best, would you say?
I think it's very ephemeral.
Do you?
And we do find cultures that are very supportive, but it's not all the way through.
Yeah.
It's particularly if they're fast growing companies. If you've got a coherent culture, and that's so people are aligned with that, and it's a coaching style of culture, then that's okay. But as soon as you start bringing in more and more people who haven't had the same history, you start to dissipate the culture. You start to dissipate the focus on the human rather than the process. And we've seen this time and time again. So in one of the big high technology companies, we did a massive study around their highest performing teams. For example, we interviewed them all. It was quite clear that what we've got in all of those high performing teams is a leader with special qualities.
Yeah.
And one of those qualities is not trying to manage anybody. It's basically helping people to manage themselves. But less mature leaders just can't get that. So we've got a number of factors coming into play here. We've got the culture of the organization. We've got the maturity of the leader, sometimes the maturity of the team as well. So you've just inherited a team which has had the same manager, command and control manager, for the last 10 years. The history of turning that team around the track record is not great. And it's one of those situations where if you're going to change the people, you have to change the people very often.
Right.
But then you're often surprised at who is willing to change and behave in the new way. But just because I, as a manager, come in, new manager, and I want to manage this way, I've got to persuade people to do that. And if their style of management was, well, you just tell me what to do, then you got problems. And we're seeing this culturally as well in some cultures, in the Russian culture, for example. Not that anybody's got teams there anymore, but there, if you are seen to be consulting people all the time, you're seen as weak.
Yes. Yeah.
Pardon me.
So you got geographical culture impact as well in the organisation. Yeah, and I see that particularly when you're coaching and working with global organisations, and taking into consideration those dynamics, those cultural dynamics. Yeah. So, David, we're going to have to wrap this up because you got two more lives. Did you say today? Was it three? Two more lives today.
I've got 2 supervisions and two more lectures. Yeah.
Good grief, busy man. Like I say, from my heart, thank you so much for doing this live and sharing some of those amazing tips with everybody. Anybody who's listening to this, please connect with David on LinkedIn. And when the website launches, and you can get hold of those resources as a coaching leader or as a coach or a mentor, then you'll get 3 months free. So that is a wonderful gift for everyone. Thank you so much. And yeah, lots of comments coming through saying thank you and thanks for your time today as well. David, I wish you the very best for the rest of the day, rest of the year. And we'll be in touch. And I'd love to talk to you again. I've got so many questions I want to ask you in half an hour is just not enough, right? We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Go safe and well, everybody.
Thank you very much.